basically are kind of anemic people or something. But anyway, he said, you humans are antibody factories. And so what they do is they inject some of their diseased tissue into us. We produce the antibodies, and then they come back and abduct us again, harvest the antibodies, and that way they have medicine for their people. And so I said, well, what are these implants you are talking, that we find? And he said he really didn't seem to know what the implants were. And, I finally described it, and he said, oh, well, you people won't be still. He said, that's the tips of our instruments. And he said, it's glass and stuff, glass and metal and stuff like that. It's the instruments break off because you people won't be still. And so he kind of gave what I took to be a laugh or a chuckle. And he said, the implants, he said, you're cutting away the meat and looking at the glass or the metal pieces. He said, the meat right around that thing, that's the implant. That's our diseased tissue. And so anyway.
Do you think, Lyn, do you think that was, based on everything you know, do you think that was some kind of cover story for transmitters or some kind of monitoring stuff, or do you believe that was probably, that's exactly what the implants are? Just broken off tips.
The guy was very free and honest with everything. I mean, that was really just another straight answer he was giving me. I don't think he had to worry about it because he knew I wasn't going to remember it anyway.
That's true. If you think, well, we can tell him everything because he's not going to remember it. All right, Lyn, let's take a quick break here and for just a minute or so. And when we come back, I want you to explain more about how they tried to recruit you to be a UFO pilot. What a deal. Okay, so we'll be right back after these messages. Howdy, we're back here again on Epic Voyages and with the Voyages. Excuse me, sometimes my mouth overloads my brain. But and tonight, I hope most of you are sitting there enthralled because we're getting one heck of a story here from Lyn Buchanan, who was former training officer of the Grill Flame Stargate remote viewing unit of the U.S. Army. We've got some questions coming in, Lyn, but before we get to those, go ahead and finish up. You're sitting on the hillside. Oh, and I remember something you told me, and I want you to share this, about the screaming and the laughing that you heard coming from the pavilion at the top of the hill where they said you don't want to go there.
Yeah, okay. Well, while I was sitting there, I was listening to the people up on the top of the hill at that pavilion type thing, and one person would be just issuing these horrible screams, and everybody else would just be laughing and laughing. I mean, just belly laughs, and then that would quieten down for a second, and pretty soon another person would be screaming, and everybody else would be laughing and laughing, and just hysterical laughter. And I didn't know what was going on up there, but I really didn't want to know.
Sounds like a pretty creepy experience.
I'm glad the guy stopped me from going up there. Yeah. I was conscious all the way through this, and if I'd gone up there being conscious, I might be one of those people that sit around in the abductees support groups.
Therapy sessions, yeah. So what did they explain to you was happening up there?
He didn't really. But the one thing that I could not remember was what this other guy was talking to me about, that sat down behind me there. And so at one point, I found a hypnotherapist, and I made sure that he did not believe in UFOs, because I didn't want somebody to, take this and and make a big deal out of it and all that. And so I asked him to. I didn't tell him what it was. I just said there was a part of my past that I couldn't remember, and I would like to remember it. And so anyway, come to find out, the guy had offered me basically a job, and so I had accepted, and I would jump at a chance for that. And so I said, okay, well, I'll go home and get my family. And he said, no, you can't get your family. We're at war. And so I said, well, if I can't, I'm not going to leave my family. And so I said, if I can't take my family, then I'm sorry, but I won't go. And basically, that's what happened. And that's
next thing you know, they loaded you up, and then you were back, and you didn't remember, right?
Yeah, that's right. And the people came back down from the hill, and they loaded us back up, and that was it. That was the whole experience. So, it was not a bad experience for me, but it was a strange one, I guess. It's not something that happens every day,
to say the least. Well, Lyn, I recall in one of our earlier conversations that you said either you figured out or they explained to you that what was happening up there was that these people had been, I don't know, put in a hypnotic type state, okay, and then once they got them up there, they would wake them up, and once they woke up and realized they were on this, weird place in a weird situation, obviously not of Earth, that's where the screaming came from. And then once they calmed down, then it was like, well, here's all these other people, everything's okay, and that's why the others were laughing at them, or am I mistaken about that?
No, I kind of got the idea that they were sort of out the whole time, but, I wasn't up there, so I really don't know. But
don't know.
I kind of got the idea that they were just sort of under all the time. And, that part of their hypnosis or being under or whatever was that this was a whole funny thing. And so that was, I take it that was how they helped the humans control their pain or their fear or whatever. But like I say, I wasn't up there, so I don't know. And
okay, you actually don't know. Right. One of the questions that came in and says, since were you in a subconscious state of mind during these encounters, or did you have any neurological symptoms like headaches during the conversations?
No, no, I was wide awake.
Right. In other words, this was kind of a fluke, and they probably were not used to people who were just fully conscious during the whole thing.
Yeah, and basically I think were sort of, the guy was babysitting me more than anything else, so that I wouldn't wander off or get in trouble or go panicking or doing something.
Cause them trouble.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's all.
Yeah. Could you tell if these grays was the gray epidermal covering, was that their skin, or do you think they were wearing some sort of synthetic coveralls or something?
People have asked me about the pilot's face and all that, and I didn't realize it until somebody asked me that the first time, but I was so fascinated by the guy's hands, because it looked like his arms were covered with cloth, but his hands were skin, was made out of skin, and I could not see where the cloth ended and the skin began, and that kept fascinating me the whole time, and so I kept.
So it could have been some kind of, artificial covering, huh?
I guess, I don't know.
Just couldn't tell.
I was watching to analyze and see what he was doing with his ship and with his control panel, and so I I really don't know the answer to that one.
Hmm.
Uh,
Did
I
they
could give
ever?
a supposition, but that's it.
I got a question here. Said, did this alien give him a name? Now, I'm not sure if that meant did they give themselves a name, or did they give you a name, or did you remember any names?
No, no.
No
It
names.
wasn't. We weren't buddies or drinking buddies or anything, you know.
Didn't have a beer with them,
He was
so
babysitting me. He was keeping me out of mischief, and that was it.
yeah, yeah. But did you get the idea that I don't know what kind of impression you got, that he was being friendly, or that he was being maybe like a dog, a pet, or a keeper, a kindly keeper. What impression did you
I
get?
would say a kindly keeper would probably do it more. I mean, he was definitely in charge of the situation, and you know, he was keeping watch over me to make sure I didn't screw anything up. And
Yeah,
so
well, yeah, I'm sure that if they only had three ships, they didn't want to lose another one.
that's right,
Um,
yeah. But he said they
okay,
were medical, and that's what they did.
medical. Okay, at the end of the experience, and you said, I want to remember, and he said, don't worry, you're not going to remember. And this was at the time when you all were filing back on the ship, right?
Yeah, and that's the last thing I remember about it now. Yeah.
Okay. Did you remember anything as to how they may have put you to sleep, so to speak? Did he wave his hand? Did he say anything? Was there any device or any machine or anything? Anything? Or was it just 1 minute you were there and the next minute you weren't?
That's what it seemed like to me, just um well, all I remembered was waking up there in the house,
Yeah.
and and I was wandering around the house just totally lost. Well, I thought, well, because the furniture's not here and all that, that caused me to have a bad dream, and I was sleepwalking or something like that. And so
Right.
I just took that as being a quirky thing that happened to me, and threw my pallet in the car and drove off.
Right. So your first inclination was to just say, well, I've had a bad dream or a bad experience, or maybe the milk had curdled I drank or something, right?
Yeah, yeah, bad
Okay.
pizza. Yeah.
Bad pizza. Yeah. Um, do you feel like, at the core of your being, do you feel like that this was just a single incident that has happened to you, or somehow do you think that this might have been one of several, and that maybe you were chosen? They actually came and picked you rather than just grab somebody that happened to be by himself in an empty house.
I think that was, just I was living way out in the country. I was in the house by myself, and I think it was just a target of opportunity, and that's it.
Happenstance. Yeah,
Yeah.
happenstance.
Now, to be honest about it, I have always had the feeling after remembering this that he had told me some. Now, this is a feeling. I can't. It's not a memory or anything.
Right.
That he had given me a way that if I ever changed my mind, I could contact him and go be a pilot.
Hmm.
I
What would
don't
that
remember.
be? You
I
would
have no idea.
you don't
I
know.
just
You just have the feeling that they're
yeah,
willing to come back for you. Huh.
yeah, and it's a feeling. There's no memory or anything to back it up. It's just a feeling that I had
Okay.
that
All right.
I've had since.
I'm sure. Here's a question. I'm sure this is a question that's on several people's minds. Can you give us a little virtual tour of the ship? Describe the whole ambiance, the material that may be out of the lights, energy source, and of course, and I've always been fascinated with the controls. Can you describe that as well as you can?
So were the men in black. uh, yeah, there were 3 rows of seats. The windows was to the right of me, and there was some kind of wall to the left. There was an open space in front. I was in the front row, and the 2 rows behind me were already filled up with people, and there were like 2 or 3 people on my left. So I guess in total there might have been 10 or 15 people. That was basically it. Maybe 20 people. I don't know. But
how many were on there when you first woke up, first looked around?
Okay, well, let's see. There were I think about 3 seats to the left and 4 seats to my right, and there were 3 rows. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3 times 8, 24. Mm-hmm. And the 4 seats to my right were empty. Mm-hmm. So maybe 20 people on the thing.
So you were one of the last ones to be picked up.
Well, no, there were, like I say, when they took me up front, we had landed. These really tall, big guys would go out and come back in. And so I guess there were, 4 people after me.
Okay.
To fill those empty seats.
Okay, so you had 20 when you got on, and 4 at 4 stops to get 4 people after that.
I'm thinking that's true. Yeah.
Something like that. Okay.
Just doing the post-incident math. Yeah, I'm thinking that's true.
Okay.
But the kind of doorway that the guy ran out of led up to the front, and the front. Excuse me. What I'm saying was the front. The front was like a control room, and there were these tall panels on both sides, and these 3 really, these guys look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mm-hmm. I got the impression that they were really dumb, be stuck for an answer if you said hello, and that they just weren't the brightest bulbs in the Christmas tree of life. And so anyway, they were just sort of there to do the work. This gray seemed to be in charge, and it was a fairly large area. It was larger than the sitting room area, And up front was the control panel, and that's where the little gray was working the controls. And there was sort of a big window right in front of that where you could look out and see where you were going. And that's really about all I remember about the layout of the place. I didn't see anything else.
Any bugs on the windshield?
I'm sorry?
Any bugs on the windshield? It sounds like the front of it would have been the windshield, right?
It sounds like, yeah. Yeah,
okay.
'cause I remember when we landed, I could look out and see 2 other ships, and one had people streaming back to it. Another one was just sitting there, and then, we sat there until the people got back onto that other ship, and then they led us out of our ship.
Now, that was when you landed on the other world, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, you made a big deal about how that y'all like to sit by the window. Did you ever look out? Could you see constellations? Could you see planets? Could you see
I never got to sit by the window.
Oh, no. They wouldn't let you by the window.
No, because they led me right up front.
Okay, so you were at the control panel.
Yeah, and then looking out the front, every time you take off, it would blur into sort of colors. I remember one time seeing what looked like the lights of a little town go by, but when we went on the long jump, basically all you could see was just colors blurring by. And
the long jump, that's, okay, in case anybody hadn't figured this out, the little short hops they were making were dropping down to various locations and picking up humans, people, okay? And then when he says this is the long jump, apparently this is when they went to this other world. And from your standpoint, vantage point, Lyn, how long did that take? Was it minutes, hours, what?
It as I remember it, and my memory's not the best, but as I remember it, I would guesstimate about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, somewhere around there.
Wow. Back to the control panel. Was this like what you see in some of the sci-fi movies, a flat thing with flashing lights, and you just move your hands around it?
No,
Or
in fact, it was,
were there throttles and wheels and
no,
things you could actually use?
no, it was very primitive. It was actually holes, and it was sort of a vacuum type thing, and the holes were in rows spread out sideways, and you had to keep the center of each row of holes lit, and as something would drift off from the ship, the light would shine through the hole that would go out from the center, and you had to put your finger over the hole that was toward the center from where the light was. That would seem to draw the light back, and it was sort of vacuum operated. And that,
Or seem that way, right?
no, because there was, as soon as the light came back under your finger, there would be a puff of air to blow your finger up and away from that hole.
Let you know it was done.
You'd immediately shift your finger over to the next hole toward the center, and wait for the light to come in under your finger there, at which time a puff would blow it off. And
was it anything like playing a flute? Except for the puff of air. Except for the air coming back at you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you had to play the holes.
It struck me as very primitive. I mean, there were no dials, there were no buttons or anything like that.
No flashing lights? No flashing lights? Except for the little buttons. Well, man,
no,
that
holes. It was little holes, and that was it.
Huh. That wouldn't cut it in Hollywood, would it?
No.
All right, let's see if we've got some more questions here. Okay, yeah. About what year did this experience happen, and how old were you at that time?
I was in college. About 70, probably around 1970, somewhere around there.
Okay, and you were what, early 20s?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I have talked to people who have repeat abductions and all this, and I have developed a thing to stop the repeat abductions. And I've given this at a lot of MUFON talks, and I've had people come back and tell me that it stops the repeat abductions, that it really works. If you are in one of these support groups, this scared little old lady is what tipped me off to this. In the support group, as you go into the support group, have everybody take some slips of paper and put them in their pocket, and have these prepared ahead of time. And each one has a very snide little remark on it. Things like, "Guy, you stink. I know what part of the cow you've been mutilating," and stuff like this, And
you mean aimed at them, right?
Aimed at them, yeah.
Say, hey, your mother wears army galoshes, right? Something like that.
Stuff like that, just crazy stuff that won't make any sense to them. What it will do is, as you have these meetings on the breaks and all, people will come up, slap you on the shoulder and say, "You're abducted," and you immediately pull out one of these slips of paper and read the Cuddy comment. And what this does is it trains you to react with something else besides fear. and you get into the habit of reacting to an abduction with something besides fear. Well, if you do that, they don't have control over you. And if they don't have control over you, they're not coming back.
Interesting.
And so even if it's false memory, and even if it's, just a psychological thing, and,
it could still work.
It can still work, because all of a sudden, whatever has been bothering you in your mind, you have control over it. And so it still works. It gets rid of the psychological situation too.
So if I feel like I'm about to be abducted, I think I'll start carrying a joke book around with me.
Yeah.
Just tell them a joke, and whether they get it or not, they're going to go, man, I don't want to hear that. Let you go.
I've always thought you carry a joke book around with you anyway.
I do, but it's called my brain, unfortunately. All right, here's a good question, and actually, I had thought about this myself. Have I've talked to, I don't know, dozens, perhaps more than 100 people with abduction experiences, and yours is one of the most profound, detailed ones and different ones that I've ever heard. Have you ever come into contact with anyone who has had a similar situation to you, or have seen these same beings, or have been to that same dim world?
Well, yes. Since this incident, being in the military and being in the situation I was in, I'm going to have to really mince some words here so that I don't say anything really wrong that I'm not supposed to say.
You mean as in classified?
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
hold it, folks. I got to tell you right here. This is why I love Lyn Buchanan. Okay, he doesn't always tell me everything I want to know, but he's really open with me, and he says, "Hey, I can't tell you." Okay, and we just have to accept that, because I know Lyn has a lot of plans in his life, and spending the rest of it in Leavenworth is not one of them. Right?
Yeah, and I always caution people that when I don't say something, don't jump to conclusions, because you're going to probably wind up being wrong anyway. And what people will do is they'll say, they'll jump to a conclusion, and then they'll quote me as having said it. And please don't do that, right? So anyway, I have come to be an acquaintance with the guy who's in charge of technology transfer. And he said the last time I saw him, every time I see him, he said, look at the new toys I have. And he has some really neat toys. But last time I saw him, he was kind of joking. And he said, basically what we're trading back to them now is their own stuff. And he said, they're not the most creative people in the planet. In space and
in the galaxy, or at least in our galaxy.
Yeah, and so he said that some of the stuff that they've traded to us in the past, we've improved on, and now then we're trading it back to them.
Reconditioned alien hardware. Get it right here, folks. Got a fire sale going on Earth right now.
Yeah.
Here's yeah. Go ahead.
He's really nice guy, and is just